My name is Mark Johnson. Along with my wife, Susan, we run a public bathhouse, a business inherited from my grandfather's time. We had a fateful encounter with a child. It was on a day in early spring when the chill still lingered in the air. It was a little past 9 o'clock in the evening. Having seen off the last customer, I was preparing to close the store with my wife. I left the indoor cleaning to Susan and went to take down the entrance sign when I spotted a small figure near the trash dump located a little way off from our shop. Under the glow of the street lamp, I could see a raggedy girl rummaging through the garbage. At that time, I thought the girl was just searching for something. But considering the late hour, I thought I should say something to her. I called Susan, and we approached the girl together. As we got closer, we saw a girl in a thin long-sleeved shirt and skirt, barefoot, in the cold season when a jacket would still be necessary. Although she wore sneakers, they didn't fit properly, and she was stepping on the heels. Surprised by her appearance, both Susan and I could do nothing but gawk, until I finally spoke up. "Little lady, it's quite late. Are you looking for something?" Perhaps startled by being addressed so suddenly, the girl flinched and turned towards us. Her hair, slightly longer than shoulder length, was messy, lacking the luster typically seen in a child's hair. Her bangs were long, obscuring her eyes. "I'm hungry," she replied. Hoping not to frighten the jittery girl, I gently addressed her. "So you're hungry, huh? But it's late. Let's call your house. Do you know your home phone number? We can phone your mom or dad to come pick you up." But the girl shook her head vigorously. "I get it. It's scary to go to a stranger's house, isn't it? How about this? We'll call your folks while we wait together here." Since it was late, I thought she might be suspicious of us. However, the girl confessed. "My mom hasn't come home for about 3 days. I've been waiting for her to return, but I'm so hungry." Her words led me to suspect possible neglect or abuse. "So, how about we call the police and you wait here a bit?" I asked. "No, not the police. Mom said no to the police," she exclaimed. The mention of the police seemed to put her on guard all at once. Just when I was contemplating calling the police despite her reluctance, we heard her stomach growl. Susan was the one to break the silence. "Are you hungry? When did you last eat?" "I haven't eaten since this morning. That's why I was searching for some food," she replied. Susan and I were lost for words. A girl in thin clothes, rummaging through garbage at night, having not eaten all day, was a heartbreaking sight. "Would you like to come to our house?" Susan proposed. I was surprised by her words. Taking a child home without contacting the police might lead to complications later. Perhaps sensing my concerns, Susan looked at me and said, "I understand your reservations. As adults, it may seem right to call the police, but how can we leave a child out here, shivering from the cold and hunger?" I resolved myself when I heard my wife's words. "If the girl is resistant, we can go to the police tomorrow. The most important thing right now is to provide this shivering child with a warm place and a meal to fend off her hunger." I put on a smile and reached out my hand to the little girl. "Come home with us, it's okay." The girl seemed hesitant for a while. But after some time, she took my hand. My wife held the girl's other hand. And so, the three of us hand in hand, returned to the public bathhouse. It seems the girl's name is Alice, or so she says. Upon returning to the bathhouse, my wife and little Alice went to bathe together. In the meantime, I went to prepare some clothes. Alice's clothes looked cold and dirty. They were no longer wearable. I brought some of my wife's clothes. A coat, shoes, and pants with a string. With the string, if tied tightly, she should be able to wear the pants without them slipping off. I quickly ran to the convenience store and bought some small-sized women's underwear. I also picked up a toothbrush while I was there. By the time everything was ready, my wife and Alice had come out of the bath. The underwear and clothes seemed a bit large, but she managed to put them on. The girl who came out of the bath had color back in her pale face and looked more like a child. Her hair, now washed and dried, was softer than before. But her long bangs were unmanageable, so my wife held them back with a pin. Underneath her long bangs was a cute face that had been hidden. "Are you feeling warm now?" When I asked, Alice nodded several times. She seemed excited. "You know, the bath is huge. It's like a swimming pool, and it's so warm. I've never taken a bath like this before." I felt relieved seeing her smile as she spoke. I was worried because she was expressionless, not like a child at all, when we met her at the garbage dump. While I was drying Alice's hair, my wife was preparing a meal. Our house is right next to the public bathhouse. After Alice and I finished drying our hair, we moved to our house next door. There, my wife served the meal she had prepared. It was a warm pot of soup. The girl's eyes sparkled at the sight of the soup, filled with vegetables, meatballs, and noodles. "Can I eat this?" My wife smiled at Alice's question and said, "Feel free to have as much as you want." After that, she ate a lot. My wife gave her a fork and a spoon because she was spilling some food as she struggled with chopsticks. She may have never been taught how to use chopsticks. "It's delicious. I haven't had a warm meal in a long time," said Alice. Thinking about the environment she must have been in up to now, my heart felt like it was about to burst. Once her stomach was full, Alice seemed to trust us a little and started talking about herself. Her mother hardly ever comes home, so she looks for food in the garbage dump. He's 7 years old, in the first grade of elementary school. But she doesn't have clean clothes, shoes, or a school bag. She's teased and bullied by her friends for smelling, so she doesn't go to school. The story we heard from the girl was shocking for us. "Are you going to call the police? I like it here. I want to stay here." Neither my wife nor I had any doubts. Seeing the hardship little Alice had been going through, I hoped she could at least have a warm, restful sleep tonight. "Don't worry, you'll sleep with us tonight. We have a comfy bed for you, but will you go with us to the police station tomorrow? The officers are kind, so you'll be okay, and your mom might be worried too." Alice stayed silent for a while, then replied, "I understand. I hope Mom's worried about me," before drifting off to sleep. I wanted to tell her that her mom was probably worried too, but I couldn't. It's not easy to speak well of a mother who is likely neglecting her child. If I were to say something to comfort her on the spot here, she might end up getting hurt later. We spread out 3 beds in the carpeted room. When she got into bed, Alice seemed quite happy. "This is amazing. I've never been in such a soft, warm bed. I hope Mom isn't cold. I wish she could sleep in a warm bed too." The sight of her worrying about her mother, who left her without even giving her food, made my wife secretly cry. It was tough for me to keep from letting Alice see my teary eyes. The next day, we escorted Alice to the local police station. I can't forget her slightly lonely expression when we were parting. "Are you guys saying bye-bye now?" I held back tears and put on a smile. "I hope we can meet again someday. The police will take good care of you, so there's nothing for you to worry about, okay?" I told her, and Alice nodded. My wife hugged Alice for the last time. As we left the station, Alice waved at us with a smile. We had become so close to Alice overnight, and it was heartbreaking to say goodbye. On the way home from the police station, my wife was very worried about what would happen to Alice. We don't have any children, but we always loved children, and we used to say we wanted about 3. When we couldn't have any and went to the hospital, we found out that my wife has ovulatory dysfunction. Yet, there are ways to have children in modern times. We underwent fertility treatment with medication. Despite taking breaks occasionally, we went through 10 years of fertility treatment. But we couldn't have a child. At the 10-year mark, we decided to stop the fertility treatment. We didn't want to give up. But we were exhausted from the ups and downs of whether or not we could have a child. We decided to cherish our time as a couple, knowing that we've tried our best. We've been living quietly as a couple since then. That's why we couldn't stand parents who let their precious children feel cold and hungry. Later, we couldn't help but worry, so we contacted the police station where we had taken Alice. It turns out her mother had not been found after leaving home. It seemed Alice was going to a foster care facility. We were given the name of the facility since we were the ones who had found her. My wife and I immediately went to visit Alice. Many children were living away from their parents at the facility for various reasons. When we went to see her, Alice hugged my wife. They told me that Mom might not come back. "You guys aren't going to stay with me, are you?" At her words, my wife and I were frozen, only able to deflect, unable to answer Alice's straightforward question. We were not relatives and couldn't live with Alice. But when we spoke with a staff member at the facility before leaving, we heard about foster parenting and adoption. When I felt this was it, I looked at my wife and she was looking at me seriously and nodded. It was the moment when we, as a couple, made a decision. We decided to learn about foster parenting and adoption that day and signed the necessary paperwork. In Alice's case, since she had just arrived at the facility, we needed permission from the family court to start the process for foster parenting or adoption. But the permission came without issue at a later date. Since then, we attended training and workshops to become foster parents, leading busy lives. During that time, we occasionally visited Alice. We had once asked her, "How would you feel if we wanted to live with you, to become your family in place of your mom?" Alice replied with a radiant smile, "I'd be really happy." That alone motivated my wife and me to keep going. Normally, a mother carries her child in her womb, nurturing them with care while the father supports to ensure the child is safely born. But we didn't have that process. We couldn't undergo the kind of struggles that typical parents have. That's why we combined our strength as a couple to overcome the busy days, holding the goal of making Alice smile more, to become her parents. But then, one day, an incident occurred. We received a sudden call from the facility staff. "Isn't Alice with you?" We were informed that Alice had run away from the facility. My wife and I hurried to search for her. Our house and Alice's old apartment are far from the facility. Just when we were fearing the worst, imagining that she might have been involved in an incident, we received a call that Alice had been found near the facility. She was apparently taken into police custody. We immediately went to see Alice, who had returned to the facility. Alice's face was wet with tears. "I wanted to go to Uncle and Auntie's place, to eat meals and take baths in the big tub again," she confessed. My wife and I, unable to say anything, hugged her small body tightly. After this incident, our desire to become a family with Alice grew even stronger. After things had settled down, I asked Alice to promise not to leave the facility on her own anymore because it was worrying. And then, I once again talked to the facility staff about wanting to take Alice into our care. After over half a year, the procedures were finally completed. My wife and I legally adopted Alice. 4 years later, my wife, Alice, and I were living happily. Alice was no longer suffering or feeling cold. She was attending school cheerfully every day, wearing a beautiful school backpack. However, A little before Alice's birthday, we received a letter from her biological mother. It was a request to meet her on her birthday. Without hesitation, Alice replied that she would like to meet her mom. To be honest, the speed of her decision made my wife and I anxious. But Alice is now in the 6th grade. She's at an age where she can make decisions for herself. We respected Alice's decision. We agreed that if Alice expresses a desire to live with her biological mother after this meeting, we would consider it positively. On the day of the reunion, Alice headed to the designated cafe by herself. My wife and I anxiously waited for Alice to return, and she did after about 3 hours, seemingly acting as usual. According to Alice, her biological mother had remarried. Her mom was smiling more happily than Alice had ever seen before. Alice was relieved to see her mom so happy because she had loved her mom even when she was left behind. So I told her, "I'm glad for you, Mom. I truly meant it when I said, 'Congratulations.'" Alice said, showing us a smile. "Forgiving someone who abandoned you is no easy task." I was reminded yet again of what a sweet, proud daughter we have. And looking slowly from one parent to another, Alice firmly declared, "Mom, Dad, thank you for finding me. Meeting my real mom made everything clear. I felt relieved after seeing her and immediately wanted to return to you both. This is where I belong." Seeing Alice so confident made us feel relieved that we'll be together from now on. After that, we decided to go buy a cake for Alice's birthday as a family. When I suggested holding hands, Alice, looking a little embarrassed, agreed, saying, "Just for today." I remember we held hands with Alice on the way to the bathhouse on the day when she was rummaging through the trash. But Alice's hand has grown so much since then. Alice will continue to grow. We don't know how long she'll want to hold hands with our parents. But no matter how big Alice gets, even if she no longer wants to hold our hands, she'll always be our precious daughter. We'll cherish this happy moment and continue to walk together as a family of 3. So, how was our story? Your subscription to our channel provides us with great motivation to continue sharing our journey. Until the next video, take care.